we do ask Pakistan to consider the message that this sends to the rest of the world.
Hello and welcome. You're watching To The Point. Today, Prashant Bhushan and Yogendra Yadav held a mammoth meeting of their supporters. Perhaps as many as 4,000 people were present. So in part 2, we ask, is the Aam Aadmi Party heading for a split, or is it resurrecting itself as a new entity? But first, Pakistan's Punjab government has appealed to the country's Supreme Court against Zaki-ur-Rahman Lakhvi's bail. Yesterday, the Islamabad High Court ordered the trial to be completed in 2 months and threatened Lakhvi's bail would be revoked if there was delay. So 4 days after Lakhvi got bail, what do we make of these conflicting and contradictory signals? Could Lakhvi be heading towards the justice he richly deserves, or is the situation simply becoming more confusing and even difficult to read? And joining me now to discuss the signals from Pakistan is former Secretary in the MEA, KC Singh, PTI's former correspondent in Islamabad, Raza-ul-Lashkar, the former Joint Secretary at RNAW, Jayadev Ranade, the lawyer who successfully prosecuted Ajmal Kasab, Ujjwal Nikham, and joining us from Islamabad, former Army General and Secretary of Defence Production, Lieutenant General Talat Masood. Mr. KC Singh, yesterday the Islamabad High Court ordered the completion of the 2611 trial within 2 months and said it would cancel Lakhvi's bail if either the deadline wasn't met or his lawyers resorted to delaying tactics. Today, the Punjab government has appealed to the Supreme Court against Lakhvi's release. But 4 days earlier, the Lahore High Court actually gave Lakhvi bail on the grounds they don't have sensitive evidence to continue to detain him. What do you make, or how do you read these contradictory signals from across the border?
No, I think there is no contradiction between these two. Nawaz Sharif government is sending a signal that they are expediting the trial, and they're also going in appeal against the order. But I think what needs to be emphasized is that even though he was given a bail in the substantive case, the 2611 case in December last, the Pakistan government has been holding him under detention under a MPO, Maintenance of Peace order.
Public
now
order.
That is an attendant thing and not really directly related to 2611. So I think what we need to see is whether they are able to link it all back to 2611.
All right. General Masood, you heard Mr. KC Singh say that he sees no contradictions, but I want to put to you a viewpoint many people in India have. They are perplexed by the fact that on the one hand, a High Court grants bail because they don't have the sensitive evidence to permit Lakhvi's detention. But on the other hand, another High Court sets a deadline and threatens to revoke bail. And the question people are asking in India is, does this reflect differences in the judiciary? Does it reflect politics? Or is it a change of heart after the original grant of bail? Which is it?
No, I think it's a combination of all these three things that you have mentioned. Because initially, I think there is definitely the case was weak in terms of holding him on. 3 times I think he had been given bail, and there were objections by the court that why are you holding him for public maintenance order for 3 times? You have extended his extension. This is not right. And I think on that basis, they got him released. But as far as the fundamental question is concerned, what about the Mumbai case against him? And for that, I think the government has always been saying that, there is some sort of a lack of evidence or not sufficient evidence, and we want more evidence. And I think this present, move on the part of the Punjab government is to sort of strengthen the case by having, new evidence incorporated in the court now. I think this is what they want to do, is to introduce some additional evidence. And that is why you are seeing that there is definitely a resolve on the part of the government to move ahead and not to sort of allow him to get free.
Raza-ul-Lashkar, you heard General Masood say that he believes that in fact the Punjab government has new evidence which they want to introduce. We don't know about that officially as yet, so let's leave that aside. You were for many years the PTI correspondent in Pakistan, and during that period you very closely followed this case. It's gone on for 6.5 years. The judge has changed 6 or 7 times. The court has changed 2 or 3 times. The prosecutor has changed twice. Is progress being made, even if only slowly and incrementally, or are we just going around in circles?
I think I would have to say that, you know, things have really been going around in circles. The judge has been changed 8 times. At least one of the judges left the case because of threats to his life. And, you know, I mean, there is a lot of evidence that has been provided by not just India, but by also by people like the US and UK. These are intercepts and, you know, other kind of technical intelligence that has been given to Pakistan. Pakistan has repeatedly said that they don't have enough evidence. Now, there is a very strange thing in the Pakistani laws that unless a suspect gives his permission, his voice sample cannot be obtained. Now, the Lakhvi and the other suspects, their lawyers have used this loophole to prevent, you know, their voices being matched with the intercepts that have been provided by India and US.
The important thing is they've used it legally.
Legally, yes.
It is part of the law.
It's part of the law. It's part of the law. And that is a really crucial thing that has not allowed the trial to move forward.
Ujjwal Nigam, as the man who prosecuted Kasab successfully in India and actually brought him a verdict of conviction, I want to ask you a simple technical question, because you know this case intimately. What is the clinching evidence on the basis of which Lakhvi and the 6 others could be convicted?
Mr. Karan, who is going to tell about the evidence that has been collected against Lakhvi by Pakistan investigative? Firstly, let me tell you that I had visited Islamabad. I had a long discussion with Pakistani prosecuting agency as well as the prosecutor.
Mr. Nigam, I'm interrupting you because it's a very bad line. I need you to be short, sharp and precise because we can't follow what you're saying. So can you please give me 3 bits of clinching evidence on the basis of which Lakhvi and the others should be convicted? But you have to be short, sharp and precise because it's a bad phone line.
Let me tell you, the criminal conspiracy was hatched in Pakistan and it is for them to collect the evidence and to present the evidence. Whatever the evidence which we have furnished to Pakistani prosecuting agency, that is not only in respect of the confession of Kasab, but the voice sample of the person who were all the while interacting with the attackers when the attack was going on. And according to our instructions and the knowledge also, that one of the voice was of Lakhvi who was issuing instructions. That voice sample we have provided. Third number is that we have the documentary evidence which we have also furnished to the Pakistani authorities.
Okay. Let me put it like this, Mr. Ranade. The question is not what is the evidence. That's one. The second question is how good is the evidence. Now, I noticed that the Islamabad High Court, when they ordered that the case be completed in 2 months, said evidence and general history are very different things. Secondly, that same High Court said admissibility and appreciation of witnesses and evidence are altogether different things. Could it be that the evidence we think is clinching and excellent is not viewed in the same light by the Pakistani High Court or the Pakistani judges?
Well, there are 2 things here. One is how the law looks at it, and I think there Mr. Nigam would be in a better position. But one is the interpretation of the law, and the second is what evidence is actually available. Lakhvi is not a new he's not a new person on the scene there. He's been around for many years. There's a lot of evidence against him. In the courts in Pakistan, I'm sure there's a lot of evidence against him. And this
but can I interrupt? It's not how much evidence is against him that I'm questioning. I'm saying how good is that evidence? Because when the judges of the Islamabad High Court say evidence and general history are very different things, when they say admissibility and appreciation of witnesses and evidence are altogether different things, aren't they actually saying this is not good enough?
Yes, but here when I spoke about interpretation, what I would say is Lakhvi has very powerful protectors. And how are they influencing the judges? It's something that people don't talk about, but I'm certain it's happening. And you will recall there was a case when...
So you're suggesting that in fact the judges are biased, that they are actually not applying objective scrutiny, they're doing it under pressure to protect Lakhvi?
I'm certainly saying it's a possibility, and there are people in the state who are protecting Lakhvi.
let me put this to you very quickly, Mr. K.C. Singh. Do you believe that we are correct in suggesting that Pakistani judges are not being objective, that they're not applying objective scrutiny, that instead they're under pressure to protect Lakhvi, which is why they keep claiming that evidence that we in India think is good in clinching is actually not sufficient? Is it right for us to take that view of the Pakistani judiciary?
Oh, well, let's not blame just the judiciary. I think unless the prosecution has made out a proper case, and very clearly they've been sitting on their haunches and saying the maximum they got from India is what they treat as minimum that they require. They're going through the form of a trial, but whether their heart is in it or not, it doesn't appear to be so. And also there is the tangible factor of the death threats and the threats, and that is why a number of cases where military has been attacked have now gone to military courts. So I think Pakistan would be well advised to set up a special court or something, give protection to witnesses, really be on the ball, not on the defensive, pleading lacuna in law. That can be done in any country, but they are not proactive. That is very clear.
I want to explore this question of how good is the evidence that's been presented by the Pakistanis, because as Mr. Nigam said, this is a conspiracy that happened in Pakistan. It has to be presented by the Pakistanis. And I also want to pursue this question of that legal loophole whereby if Lakhvi doesn't allow his voice samples to be taken, the voice transcripts and intercepts can't be used against him. I'll go first to Razaul and then I'll go to General Masood. Razaul, what's your feeling? Is it, as Mr. Nigam said, that the Pakistani government has failed to gather the evidence and submit it to court? Well, is that the real problem, that the evidence is there, the conspiracy happened there, but the Pakistani investigators simply haven't bothered to get it together?
Well, I think the investigation on the Pakistani side was handled by a person who was very, very qualified. I mean, the former head of the Federal Investigation Agency. I mean, they used information from what I was able to gather while I was in Islamabad. They used information given by India to go and find the sites where these guys had trained.
So they've got the evidence?
They've got evidence. They, in fact...
Is it the court won't accepting it?
The court is not accepting it, A. B...
just let me stop you there. Yeah. Is the court not accepting it because the judge is not being objective?
No, it's because there are loopholes in the Pakistani law.
What are these loopholes?
I mean, for example, this whole issue of not allowing the voice samples to be.
But that won't affect evidence that Pakistani investigators have put together because they never got the intercept.
That is one, and the other is that the judges have been questioning whether they should be allowing Indian evidence to be used in a Pakistani court. Because
but hang on a second. If the evidence has been gathered effectively by the Pakistani federal investigators, which is what you said, then none of these problems would apply to that.
Yeah, but this was done on the basis of information provided by India. So they're saying that...
So ab initio it becomes questionable.
Yes.
Let me bring you in on that point, General Talat Masood. To Indians, it seems very strange that we have lengthy voice intercepts where Lakhvi in detail over several hours is giving instructions to the 2611 killers about what to do. And those intercepts are provided by India. They're also, by the way, provided by America. But they cannot be used because Lakhvi will not give permission for a voice sample to match his voice against the intercepts. Now, your judges know that this may be a technical loophole that he can legally use, but equally he's using it as a way of obstructing justice. Surely there must be a way around it in the Pakistani legal system.
Yeah, the only way I can see is that they'll have to bring in new legislation about it. Then only I think they can pursue this case and use their voice sample as the real evidence against him. So the problem is, I think, will they have that much of political will to do that, to introduce a legislation in order to sort of...
But they certainly haven't shown any political will to do that up till now. Do you have any sense that the Nawaz Sharif government is willing to bring in new legislation? And by the way, that legislation would have to apply retrospectively, not prospectively. Otherwise, it wouldn't be sufficient. Do you have any sense Mr. Nawaz Sharif is prepared to do that so that these intercepts can then become proper admissible evidence?
No, I don't think so. I don't think there will be that much of political will at this point of time. At least I don't see that. And I think Pakistan is at the moment also focused on many other issues that are taking away the focus on this very important issue. And this also, I think, we have to keep in mind.
In which case, Mr. Nigam, if you're hearing what General Masood has said, that there is no political will either to bring in legislation to make those intercepts legally admissible, because at the moment they aren't, and also that Pakistan is focused on other things and not on this case. Do you believe that by setting a 2-month deadline for completing the case, the outcome could be Lakhvi's acquittal rather than conviction?
100%, Karan. Now there is certainty that Lakhvi will be clean acquitted, because now only very formal witnesses are remained to be examined, because more than 50 witnesses have already been examined by Pakistan prosecuting agency, and now only formal witnesses like investigating squad and some carriers and technical witnesses are remain to be examined, and they are not going to advance case against Lakhvi in any case. So I will not be astonished even if Lakhvi will be acquitted after 2 months, because no sincere efforts were being done. Firstly, Lakhvi was not charged for criminal conspiracy. Let me tell you this fact, because my friend is also present on the other side. So when we pointed out to Pakistani Home Ministry that why Lakhvi is not being charged for the criminal conspiracy, it is very seldom to have direct evidence on the point of the criminal conspiracy, but prosecution can successfully bring that charge against the accused by pointing out various acts and omissions committed by the co-conspirator in pursuit of the criminal conspiracy. All the while they played only game blaming India that India did not cooperate. What type of cooperation they require? Because in pursuit of the criminal conspiracy, Prasad and his 9 colleagues have committed atrocities on the night of 26 November. But they had to find out that evidence which they did not. I don't know whether there was a political will or not.
You made that point very effectively, but it brings to my mind something else, and I want to put that to you, Mr. Ranade. We in India believe justifiably that we are right in criticizing the way Pakistan is conducting this case. On the other hand, the Pakistanis point out that there is, of course, something very similar happening to the way India is handling the Samjhauta Express trial, where some 65 Pakistanis died. That's dragged on for 8 years, 1 year more than the 2611 case. The original accused have been replaced. There's a new lot of accused. Lakhvi, just like Swami Asimanand was given, just like Lakhvi was given bail, Swami Asimanand was given bail, and no one knows when the Samjhauta trial will end. So do we really have a moral basis for being critical of Pakistan when the Samjhauta case is not being handled in any better way in India?
I think there is a lot of difference between the two. Firstly, I quite agree with you that the Samjhauta case has been mishandled, and probably now the evidence, I don't know whether it's available or whether it's very weak.
But you accept it's been mishandled?
It's certainly mishandled. The second is, of course, the slow pace at which our judiciary works.
Just like the Pakistani?
Just like the Pakistanis. But when we look at the Lakhvi case, when we look at the case there and what happened in Mumbai, the evidence is overwhelming. There are intercepts by the US.
That's the difference, isn't it? The evidence in the Lakhvi case is overwhelming. It's not in the Samjhauta. And but the slowness of the judiciary and the poorness of the investigation are similar in both.
And we had a live witness.
KC Singh, clearly, India on its own cannot put sufficient pressure on Pakistan to ensure that Lakhvi and the 6 others come to justice. But 6 of the 166 killed in 2611 were Americans. What are the chances that America will step in to secure justice for its own citizens who were brutally murdered that night?
You're absolutely right. It's having international ramifications, and US has repeatedly stepped in. And in fact, I want to make the point that we can get past the voice sample thing, because now you got David Headley's evidence, and you got Abu Jundal, whom we got from Saudi Arabia in the last couple of years. He's an eyewitness to the presence of Lakhvi. Why isn't that evidence being used? So we should be asking Pakistan to send a commission here and take his evidence. I don't know why that lacuna is being allowed to float around.
Can I ask you, can I stop you there?
There is a way.
Can I stop you there? Are you suggesting that in fact India should take the initiative to say to Pakistan, send a commission here, meet Jundal, get his evidence? Because that's a step, as far as I know, the Indian government hasn't taken.
I don't know whether they have or they haven't. I haven't seen it in the public space. We have a witness to that guy's presence in the control room there from where they were committing the crime. So that should be, he should be up, he goes well past any voice sample that you have a witness.
Okay.
Now that I'm sure Pakistani law permits the evidence of such a person being taken. And secondly, US certainly has a vested interest. As you know, DGISI was sued in America. There was a civil suit. 6 Americans died, 6 or 7. So US has a clear interest. And for them, any single life is as important as 100 or 10 or 1. It doesn't matter. So they are partners in this. Otherwise, they wouldn't have given us access to Headley.
Raza Lashkar, one hope that Pakistan could actually find a way of bringing these 6 and 7 to justice is the American intervention. The other possibly could be that in the last 1 year, power has shifted significantly from Nawaz Sharif to General Raheel Sharif. He at the moment is fairly effectively tackling and taking on the TTP in the Northwest, but also he has a hugely improved relationship with America, which he values and he wants to maintain and preserve. What is the chances that General Sharif may step in and decide Lakhvi needs to be brought to justice? Or is that unlikely?
It's very, very unlikely. I mean, there's a clear distinction between the TTP and a group like the Lashkar-e-Toiba. The Lashkar-e-Toiba does not attack Pakistani soldiers, and it doesn't kill Pakistani soldiers. It has operated.
But it killed people in Pakistani military schools, 160 young children.
That is the TTP. I'm talking about the Lashkar-e-Toiba, which is Lakhvi's group. The Lakhvi's group hasn't attacked the Pakistani army at any stage. They are no threat to the.
So they continue to be seen as assets rather than enemies.
I have had people tell me they are assets.
They are assets. Actually.
They are assets.
They are certainly assets, and we have enough people who have said that publicly.
General Masood, Mr. Modi has repeatedly said that relations between India and Pakistan cannot improve whilst people accused of terror against India go around scot-free. I want to ask you a simple question. Is protecting Lakhvi and Hafiz Saeed more important for the Pakistani government than improving relations with India?
Are you asking me?
Yes, I am, sir.
Yeah, well, definitely not. Definitely not. But I think India is not in a mood to improve its relations with Pakistan, and that is the sense here in Pakistan. So I think that is also one of the factors why there is not so much of enthusiasm for proceeding against this case. So I think one also has to understand that there is a political element in this whole case.
You sound to me, General Masood, as if you're blaming India for the lack of progress. You sound as if you're blaming India for the lack of progress.
No, please don't misunderstand me, but I'm just telling you the reality. The reality is that if the relations between the two countries improve, the level of confidence also improves, and you will find that these forces, like, you know, Lashkar-e-Taiba and all, will be in the on the defensive. But the problem is that when the relations with India are such as they are today, then these forces really are much stronger and more powerful, and it becomes more difficult to handle them, because you don't want two adversaries, one across the border and one within the country.
One last question. Do you see Lakhvi and those 6 others ever coming to justice, or do you share Mr. Nigam's fear that this deadline of 2 months probably will ensure acquittal rather than conviction?
Well, I certainly anticipate delays, if not acquittal. They will not bring him to justice. As I started off by saying, he's got very powerful protectors. I understand some of them were present when he had a celebration after coming out of jail. But apart from that, the evidence is overwhelming. So what is the hitch really? They've got American intelligence reports, they've got David Headley's eyewitness report, they had Kasab's statements. You don't need anything more.
But what about the fact that, as Razal pointed out, that the intercepts can't be admitted legally, and that is a legal problem. And secondly, the judges have concerns about accepting evidence that comes from India.
They also have concerns about their own life. They also have, there's also a touch of radicalism.
Very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, just think about this. If there were threats to lawyers and to prosecutors and to the judges while Lakhvi was in jail, think about what the judges and the witnesses will be thinking now that Lakhvi is out of jail.
You mean the threats are worse?
Obviously.
So what does that lead you to the conclusion of? That Lakhvi will face justice and be convicted or
I
acquitted?
think it's going to be very, very complicated now. I think he's going to have more buttons to push now that he's out of the jail. I mean, this is a man...
So we have no idea how this is going to end.
This is a man who was meeting up to 100 visitors in the jail. So, a day.
All right. So the situation has become both more complicated and more difficult to understand. The conflicting signals from Pakistan simply suggest that reality is becoming even more difficult to read. My thanks to both of you for coming to studio. My thanks also to my other guests.